This week, the name on the marquee has got to be Tatiana Suarez, who this past weekend, in front of almost 18,000 people at the Bridgestone Arena in Nashville, Tennessee, at UFC Fight Night, in the co-main event spot, defeated the great Jessica Andrade by submission via guillotine choke in the second round. The official time, 1:31 of round two. Mark, let me start with you this time, as we always do. Give us your impressions of your girl, Tatiana, getting the biggest win of her career, defeating in impressive style, in emphatic style, the biggest name on her resume to date in Jessica Andrade. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, man. As I said last week, I love Jessica Andrade, but Tatiana Suarez is a problem. I mean, I don't think it's crazy to say that we may be looking at a future double champ. She's that good. And yes, there's absolutely room for the striking to improve. I wouldn't say she's like well-rounded perfection, but the grappling, wrestling, size combo that she brings into the cage, especially at 115, is just overwhelming and a level above anyone that she's stood across from thus far. All she has to do is get a hold of you. It doesn't even have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be, like arms wrapped around. Doesn't have to be perfect single leg, nothing. All she has to do is get a hold of you, and she will find a way to reposition her body and affect your balance so that in the end she ends up on top of you. No perfect entry, no big blast takedown. She doesn't need it because she is that good of a wrestler, and she will find a way to put you on her back. And then the submission game that comes with it. She chokes out Andrade while barely even being able to lock her hands. So, huge win for Tatiana. She's got to be getting very close to a title shot at this point now. I know she only just came back to this division. Her prior fight was up at 125. I know the top of the division is a bit cloudy, so who knows what happens here, but can't position herself much better than she did on Saturday.
Omar, what were your thoughts watching Tatiana Suarez put an exclamation on this performance by finishing Jessica Andrade with that guillotine choke?
I mean, what more can you say? Jessica Andrade has had a little bit of a rocky last few fights. I think she's lost 3 out of her last 4 fights at this point, 3 in a row. But she's been active too, so there is something to be said about that. She's fought I think 5 times in the last year, 2 years maybe, a year and a half, something like that. So it's been a very short time frame for her to be taking all these fights. With that being said, the size difference was apparent. I mean, Jessica Andrade has never been the tall girl in the division, but when you go down to 115, it's been less of a towering, I feel like, with some of her opponents, right? Even Lemos was 115, right? And even she was a little bit bigger than Andrade, but not crazily so as she has been at 125. Tatiana Suarez brings the size issue that she was at 125, but down at 115. And it's really a big problem, and it kind of reminds me of Patchy Mix, right? Patchy Mix is a gigantic human being to be. I was talking to my wife today about it, and I was talking about the relationship. I was listening to Tatiana's thing on MMA Hour, and I'm picturing Patchy Mix, and I'm like, this man looks like a lightweight. And then I was like, no, 135. Fights at 135.
Yeah.
He's a big dude, and Tatiana kind of strolls around with that same kind of energy, just much bigger for her division, on top of the fact that she is stupidly skilled. I couldn't have been happier for her, though, man. I'm a big Tatiana Suarez fan. She's a fun personality, and she's ridiculously good inside of the octagon.
Dude, I think she's listed at like 5'5" or something.
Yeah,
but she seems like she's so much bigger and so much taller.
Yeah. Agreed. I would have thought she was 5'7", 5'8",
Yeah,
just by
right.
the way she like carries herself in the octagon and can just towers over some of these girls.
Yeah.
To follow on the mix point, they fight so similarly. Like, it must be so easy for them to find little tips to be like, hey, like I just was doing this and it worked. Like, you should try it. And they can just easily do exactly what's working for the other person. You know what I mean? It's like their games fit so perfectly together.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Did she call anybody out in her post-fight? She said she wants the top now, right? She's going for the top.
Title.
She wants the
I don't know
title.
if she said their names necessarily, but I think she just said she wants the title, yeah.
when she talked on MMA Hour recently, she was talking about how she wanted the title. She didn't really care who held the title. If she couldn't get the title next for whatever reason, I think she was down for either Yan Xiaonan or it might have been one other name. But Yan Xiaonan was the one that stuck with me because I was like, it might be time for that if she doesn't get an immediate title shot. But to be honest, man, she's kind of earned it as far as I'm concerned. She hasn't lost. She looks dominant in almost everything that she's ever done. And it would be crazy. Like, she just came back from all of these issues that she's had with her health and things like that and injuries. And for her to become champion in a year after a layoff, I mean, that sells itself as far as I'm concerned because she has a real shot of winning that belt.
Yeah. So what do you guys think? She is now 10-0 overall as a pro. She stays undefeated. I believe she's 6-0 in the UFC. If you want to say 7-0 in the UFC, if you want to throw in her win on the Ultimate Fighter finale. What do you think is next for her? Do you think she waits until she gets her title shot, or do you see another opponent lined up in front of her before she gets to that summit? Mark?
I'm sorry, who'd you ask? Me? I mean, you'd like to say she should fight the winner of Weili and Lemos because she deserves a title shot, as Omar said, but I kind of still think they're going to give that shot to Yan Xiaonan, especially if it's Weili who wins. If it's Weili, I think 1,000,000% they're going Weili versus Yan. So, and then it's like you don't want to say Suarez should fight Yan Xiaonan because then we'd have to wait for that to happen, and whoever wins this Weili Lemos fight that's very soon ends up waiting for them. So I think it's going to be one of them that just straight up gets the title shot here between Tatiana and Xiaonan. So I don't know. Either she gets it, or if it does go the other way and she ends up kind of with nothing, she may have to take like a stay busy fight, which I don't know who even makes sense. She might have to fight like a Virna Jandiroba, someone like that, just to keep active in the meantime if she doesn't get this title shot. But I think you got to see even who wins the Lemos Weili fight.
What about you, Omar? What do you think?
No, I kind of agree. I think we kind of need to see how things play out to see exactly where the division moves from there. Weili's been pretty dominant. The whole Yan Xiaonan factor is going to come into play, especially when you talk about selling in Asia and kind of building up that market over there in Asia. That's a big fight. But as of right now, it's Amanda Lemos who's got the ticket, and I guess it really depends on where she wants to go from that. And I think that's why Suarez said if she has to take another fight, if Yan Xiaonan has to take another fight for whatever reason, I think ideally that would be this fight that makes sense as a backup.
Let's talk about the woman in this contest who came up on the other end here, Jessica Andrade, who all three of us rate pretty highly, is now looking at a 3-fight losing streak and quite a bit of red on her record as of late in the past few years overall. After rattling off a 3-fight win streak over Cynthia Calvillo, Amanda Lemos, and Lauren Murphy, she has now dropped 3 in a row. So, Omar, let me start with you for this time for Andrade. Looking at the landscape of the division, what do you think could be next for her?
Man, I was just thinking about this, with the wife the other day about where she goes, what makes sense, because she's kind of put herself in a little bit of a hole where looking for gold is difficult now in either division that she's been jumping into, right? Whether it's 115 or 125, getting gold, I think, is at least, I mean, you'd have to have a streak at this point. You'd have to have 2 or 3 wins minimum, I think, unless you're like wrecking girls that have been at the very top of the heap somehow. But getting those fights, I think, is going to be a real problem for her at this point. Yeah. It's really difficult to say. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Jessica Andrade decided to hang it up, just based on the landscape and what she'd have to do to work her way back up. I don't know if that's something that she wants to do at this point. But I think she would have to fight somebody kind of outside of the top 5, because right now she is top 5. She is number 5. Actually, she's number 6 in the strawweight division. So I think she's going to have to fight somebody in the 15 or in the 10 and kind of put up her spot, essentially, right? And see if she can keep it and earn it. I mean, maybe somebody like an Amanda Hebos might make sense at this point. She's number 11 in the division. I know she just had a fight, didn't she?
Hebus, yeah, she just fought a couple weeks ago.
But she's been fighting at flyweight, so you're saying go back up for Andrade?
I mean, I don't know where she would stay. I think it's just a matter of
I mean, I guess
what fights
make
make sense.
To see her at either weight at this point, whatever fight she likes, she'll probably sign on for.
Yeah.
Mark, what about you? What do you think could be next for Jessica Andrade?
I don't think she'll retire. She's only 31 years old, which is pretty wild.
Wow.
And how about the fact that we all put her in our top 10 and then she promptly loses 3 in a row?
Wow. She's 31. That means that she's been in the UFC since
right?
she was 21, because she started fighting the UFC in 2013.
Yeah.
Dog, she has 36 fights at 31 years old.
Wow. Crazy. If she does stay at 115, I think her and Marina Rodriguez would be a booking that makes some sense at this moment and should be fireworks potentially. So I'll go there.
Nice. Mm-hmm. Man, cannot wait to see Tatiana Suarez competing in the octagon next. It's her time, man. Don't you just feel it? I feel it. It's her time.
I do too. I'm getting those
I feel like
tingles.
we are entering or about to enter like the Tatiana Suarez era.
I don't think I've ever had a moment since Tough where I didn't think Tatiana Suarez was going to be the champion. Wow. It's just been
100%.
delayed
For sure.
nonstop by all the sickness and injuries and everything. Like the whole time I've been like, even when she was out, I was like, man, I hope she can come back, because if she comes back healthy, she should still be the champion. Like, yeah, she's just that fucking good.
Yeah.
And honestly, man, there were moments there where you weren't really sure if she was going to come back. There was a lot of silence from her, from her side, right? Like, and her injuries were pretty extensive from what, like, I think both of her knees like took a shit.
Yep.
There might have been something with her neck as well. Like
She was sick at one point too. I forget the sickness, but she was dealing with something pretty bad there too.
Yeah, I know she came back from some kind of cancer already.
That was
like
pre-Tough, right? Yeah.
Right. That was already something that had happened, and then again she got messed up again along the way in the last 3 or 4 years. I think 3 years.
Yeah.
But man, that girl has overcome a lot of shit, and it would be great from a storyline standpoint. This is one of those ones that you want it to work out, because it's a beautiful story.
For sure.